Happy Friday, everybody. My name is Roy Kirchner, and this is Secrets for Success in 2025. And we are sitting here in the middle of August, August 15th, and I am a serial entrepreneur based out of Tampa, Florida. Own several businesses here and have been an entrepreneur for decades. And we do this every single week to give you tips and tricks on how to become more successful in business and in life. And my co-host is JR, and I'm going to let him go ahead and introduce himself.
Thank you so much, Roy, and good morning, everyone. My name is JR Espino. My company is Alloy Advisors, and I'm a business coach. And what I mean by that is I coach business owners and leaders, particularly in small, medium business, to be able to help them achieve their financial goals with their financial performance, as well as ensure that they have the right kind of company culture and employee engagement and leadership development. I am not a serial entrepreneur. I came from corporate America, made the transition after having spent nearly 3 decades with the same employer, a multi-billion dollar company. And taking those experiences and applying it to small, medium business who might not have the same resources as a multi-billion dollar organization. But before we jump in, I actually want to say happy birthday to Mr. Roy Kirshner. Earlier this week, it was his birthday, so got to celebrate and I got to see some pictures there. Hope you had a wonderful birthday, Roy.
Man, thank you so much, brother.
Nice,
Absolutely.
nice, good, good, good. All right, I actually don't see the stream on LinkedIn. Are you seeing it on Facebook and LinkedIn?
I am seeing it on LinkedIn, so we're good to go. I am
Okay,
definitely seeing it there. So,
okay, perfect. All right, so it may just be my connection here. I'm actually joining you from Hudson, Florida today at one of my clients, a great jewelry store, Gold Galore Custom Jewelry. In the event that you are interested in taking a look, a little plug for my client here. And so, we like to focus on topics that are relevant for leaders and entrepreneurs, topics that are relevant for people who may be established in either leadership or entrepreneurship. Maybe they're new to it, or perhaps even aspiring. And so, for this week's topic, what we would like to talk about is the number one business mistake that we made and how to avoid it. Basically, how to learn from those real world trials and tribulations and getting to the point where you're able to look at that as a stepping stone. And we've talked a lot in prior episodes around failures and that you're going to fail, especially as an entrepreneur, and to look at
yeah.
that in a different light. And so, with that, Roy, I'm going to ask you, I must ask you a question. I like to say that. So, what would you say has been the biggest business mistake you've made, and what led up to that?
Yeah, so I mean, the number one mistake starting in business and people that don't know me or haven't heard my story, I actually graduated high school with a fourth grade reading level, right? And I was, diagnosed with slow learning disability, and I really it was about if something didn't interest me, I didn't pay attention. So it was really hard, and I think the number one thing that people make a mistake, or my mistake was, is accounting, financing,
Mm,
the money side of the business, right? And
yeah,
it's understanding financial literacy
yeah,
is probably one of the most important things that you need to completely understand, in two sides, in business and in life, right? It's really understanding money.
yeah.
It's understanding, especially in business, it's understanding how to read a P&L, profit and loss, how accounting is done, how to set up charts of accounts, all the things that to an entrepreneur, believe it or not, unless you're from that world and then became an entrepreneur, are the things that you just don't like, right? It's the boring
Hmm.
side. Like, I could never, ever be an accountant. I could never do taxes. Those types of things for somebody with my brain are like the killers, right? I just don't
Mm,
like it. I don't like it. It's not something I want to do. But you grow to understand that that was the biggest mistake, is not understanding that up front when you're starting out, right?
yeah.
The beautiful thing with me in any business I had is I was really, really good at sales. Okay.
Mm,
So I was really good at getting customers. I was really good at sales. And if I wasn't good at taking care of the customer before, during, and after the sale and building a business and having customers, I would have gone out. I would have gone out of business,
mm,
right? Because it made up for the problems that I had with the accounting side. Long story short, if you're bringing in money, right, you're okay. So no matter
yeah,
what, I was always capable of bringing in money. But to gain wealth, right, and to get bigger, stronger, better, you need to understand the money side of it. And you need to understand it in both aspects in business and life. And I truly don't believe that that is even the things that you actually need to know and understand.
hmm,
I learned from mentorship and I learned from people that were successful. And I still meet college graduates that don't understand it the way I learned it from mentorship.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I really I don't feel that there's necessarily a school out there that teaches you some of it. Some of it is smacking you in the face, right? And you're learning as you go.
yeah, yeah, perfect. And sorry, I was texting some people that I know who are logged into this LinkedIn and asking if they see it, and they don't either. So we'll just keep motoring along here, and I'll ask the viewers who are there, and maybe I'm looking at the wrong LinkedIn stream, but what's one lesson you wish you learned sooner in business? That's for the viewers to be able to answer. And I'll tell you, from my standpoint, my initial question to Roy was, um, what's the biggest mistake you've made and what led up to it? And so similarly, in terms of what Roy's talking about with what his experience had been, then, having those challenges along the line of financial literacy, that I had a little bit of a different challenge and mistake, and that is perfect. All right, so I have this other link I'm going to send out as well. Maybe we can repost this too. But as far as my mistake was that I wanted to be everything to everyone. And when we go into business or when we're leading, sometimes we fall into that trap, right? Like, oh, I have all the solutions. I want to be everything to everyone. And guess what? With that, sometimes you spread yourself a little bit too thin, right? And sort of what led me to that mistake was that, you know, I have this big heart. I left corporate America because I want to be able to have a different kind of meaningful impact, a different kind of sense of fulfillment. I want to impact the world, right? Well, it's what does they say? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? And so really my approach was, well, it's great to have that giant dream, giant focus. Also, you have to do it in a way where it is a little bit more focused. There's a saying, right? Niches make riches, or I like to say, niches get you on the beaches. You have to have a level of focus because otherwise, like I said, you can spread yourself a little bit too thin. Even if you were to think about like a swimming pool, right? If you had a swimming pool that's 1,000 gallons, that's a small swimming pool, but 1,000-gallon swimming pool, and you take that same amount of water and put that 1,000 gallons in the ocean, that's like nothing, right? But if you take that same 1,000 gallons and try to stick it into, you know, a bathtub, it's going to be overflowing and overflowing. And that's sort of the thing that I learned too is like, hey, how can I have a better focus?
Yeah.
So for you, Roy, as far as the mistake or any mistakes that you've had, what emotions did you experience in that moment? Like, was there embarrassment, regret, panic, any of those types of things as you navigate any of the mistakes that you might have made along the
Yeah, so I mean that's the biggest thing that nobody discusses, right? Is you're really trying to understand who to trust,
way?
right? When something is embarrassing. And a lot of times that is what actually hurts people
Mm,
is they don't know who to trust and they don't trust, right?
yeah, yeah,
And they feel super embarrassed. because they're just not understanding something.
Yeah.
And it does happen, and I've been in that realm. It's a truly lonely place, right?
Yeah.
In entrepreneurship, it happens very often, actually. It
Yeah.
happens a lot. That's one of the reasons why I like even got into coaching and consulting an entrepreneur, is because I want them to understand that they're not alone,
Yeah.
right? And that I've been through probably 10 times more than they're even actually going through,
Yeah.
because I'd actually have, right? Like, you learn from trials, from tribulations, and from the weakness of not getting somebody to help you, be right? Because you're
Hmm.
just, like you said, you're just embarrassed like, why didn't I know this? Like, it's so easy, but it's actually not easy, but you're thinking in your head it's easy and you don't want to tell somebody. So I think a big part of being an entrepreneur and being successful, I truly believe, is finding like a
Mm.
coach, right? And finding, the difference with a coach is it's somebody that no matter how much business you're doing, or no matter how much business you're not doing, no matter what you're doing, they're getting paid a certain amount, right? Like, you're paying them
Hmm.
to coach you. And if they have a resume, that's what you want. You want somebody that has
Yeah.
been through trials and tribulations and things like that, but they don't have an ulterior motive, because no matter how much business you do, no matter how much business you don't do, they still get paid, right?
Right.
But the goal is to connect with that person on a level, right? To connect with that business owner on a level that they're capable of knowing that they can trust you, and that you're going to be able to give them the answers to help them solve the problem, right?
Yeah.
And the only people that understand entrepreneurship are entrepreneurs, and everybody's at a different level of entrepreneurship. Some, like you said, they're just starting out. Some
Hmm.
that, they've been in it, but they only have one business. Then some have multiple businesses. Some have exited companies. Some have not. Like, there's so many different sides of entrepreneurship, but if you don't create a network of other entrepreneurs and people that you can confine in, it becomes a really lonely place. And there was a lot
Yeah.
of times that I experienced that through my biggest growth. So, like, I
Yeah.
became the sixth fastest growing company in Tampa Bay in 2021, but believe it or not, COVID was going on. And it was a very,
Mm.
very unique time to be an explosive growth. One, because everybody else, there's a lot of people that aren't doing good. So
Yeah.
yeah, I remember I'm doing more business than I've ever done. We're busier than we ever have been. And I'm getting ready to go to work. And before I go to work, I walk my dog down the street and I see
Hmm.
other entrepreneurs in my neighborhood, right? And they come out and they're just talking about how horrible things are for them. And it's
Mm.
like, I feel like strange to say, well, like I'm so busy I can't breathe. Like, I'm doing this well. So
Yeah.
yeah, you feel really strange, right? You feel like, wow, like, how has this happened to me? But everybody else is basically not doing good.
Right.
So it's those types of things that happen. So it's a lot of mental toughness. Let's put it
Yeah.
that way. To be an entrepreneur, to be a one percenter, there is true entrepreneur. It doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
It doesn't work
Yeah.
for everybody.
Agreed. And so, to that point, that's where we have to have that sort of that gut check. And even to a certain degree, not even a certain degree, we need to have emotional intelligence. We need to have self-awareness around those things as well. Because if we don't know that about ourselves, we might find ourselves sort of spiraling out of control, going down the wrong path or whatever it may be. And so, even as we're talking about mistakes that we have made in our business. David, thank you for your comment there that you had someone recently tell you if you're talking to everyone, no one is listening, right? And that was, I think that you're commenting on what my mistake had been. And I'll tell you, honestly, in terms of some things that I personally felt from an emotion standpoint when it came to when it comes to business mistakes. is pride. I'll be completely honest with you that it is about pride. Sure, you might want to call it ego, you might want to call it, I don't know, cockiness or whatever it may be, but it's pride. I felt like, I hurt my pride. And luckily, I know myself well enough to be able to overcome that, right? And to be able to say, yeah, you know what? I need to be humble here and I need to take my licks, right? I need to be able to, take this mistake and truly value it as something as a learning opportunity. And then, even if it's a weakness that I may potentially have, surround myself with people who can help build that for me. Or maybe I don't even need that strength because I have somebody else who's able to really help build that for me or fill in that gap, right? So, when we're in business, just like Roy says, a lot of the times, when you are the CEO, when you're the entrepreneur, it can be very, very lonely. And you really have to have that self-awareness just so that then you can get to that next level to overcome some of those things. And so, Roy, I'll ask you this, in terms of the different mistakes, we talk about those are learning opportunities. Now, for you, what did it take to bounce back from the mistake, whether it's practically or mentally?
A lot, right? So I guess one of the things that you always have to remember in business and in life, right, is your support system, right? Who you
Mm,
have as there to support you. Whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a business owner, whether you're a person, right? You
mm,
have mental toughness within yourself, and people have different mental toughness.
yeah.
I can honestly tell you I have tremendous mental toughness because of the things that I've been through and just not quit. And we could sit here for 3 days and I could tell you stories without you even saying a word.
Hmm.
And I could just tell you story after story after story, and you would probably fall on the ground with just different things that have happened in business and in life, right? And we all
Hmm.
have things, right? But I have real mental toughness. But the most important thing in life, right? That is so important is basically your hand, the people you can count on your hand.
Mm,
Like if something was going on in your life, who are you going to call? And are they really going to be there? And we only
yeah.
have a certain amount of people. Some people don't even have an entire hand. That's five people, right? Some people
Yeah.
only have one. Some people only have two. The thing that I think that I realized within life is the most important thing is those people, right, that are on your hand, or the most important thing is adding somebody to your hand, right?
Mm,
Like, is it capable of actually adding another person there? And people don't talk about that, but I mean, you go out, you meet people, you network, there's casual people that you meet, there's people that become friends, right? But to actually add somebody like if the world was blowing up, right? And you called that person, are they going to stop everything
mm,
and be there for you, right? And there's only so many people that will do that, right? For somebody. So I think your support system is gigantic, is enormous, right? It's something that anybody has to look at, and who you surround yourself with. Are they authentic? Are they real? Are they genuine? Right? Like, do they
hmm.
really see you for you, right? No matter what happens, like, do they see you and you can trust them, right? You can confide in that person, right? So
Hmm.
I think that, the more you look at that within yourself and the more you look at that to become successful or become more successful, it really matters, right?
Hmm.
It truly does matter. So I think that is one of the biggest things that you want to pay attention to, especially now, like in 2025, right? There's
Yeah.
like an enormous amount of things going on, and you need people that make sure that you understand that you need to control the things that you can control. The
Yeah.
things that you cannot control in this world, you need to like not pay attention to as much, right?
Yeah.
Because it's about what is around you and who's around you and what you can
Hmm.
control and some of the things that you can't control. So it's those types of things. But learning is the most important thing constantly, being a life student, right?
Hmm.
Learning from your mistakes, looking at the past, hindsight's 2020, looking at the past and making sure that you don't continue to make those mistakes. And I think that was the number one thing. Every time I make a mistake, I do slow down enough to not only realize I made a mistake, but figure out how to learn from that mistake. So, yes, like you make an accounting mistake. Listen, we're not going to make that mistake again. We're going to put check and balance systems in place. We're going to put standard operating procedures in place. We're going to put, notifications in place to allow us to not make those mistakes. So as
Yeah.
long as the thing that you've done wrong hurts you, I hate to say it, but hurts you bad enough, right? That stings you hard enough, you're not going to do it again.
Yeah, 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 and it's funny because just recently I was talking with someone, actually just yesterday, and we were talking about how our parents teach us as young children, don't touch the hot oven, don't touch the hot oven. Yet we still touch the hot oven, right? And we don't learn from it until we experience that pain. And so, although we're talking about how to avoid some of these things, we need to experience it so that then we can figure out how to incorporate that into our own life, our own style, because not everyone reacts in the exact same way. But one thing that I really want to dive deeply into, Roy, that you talked about is having a focus on what we can control versus what we can't control. And this is something I talk about all of the time. And what I talk about is the fact that we, as human beings, have the power of choice. We have the ability to choose how we respond and react to the things that happen to us. And when I talk about that, I often reference the story, the carrot, the egg, and the coffee bean. And in a nutshell, what that's about is when subjected to boiling water, those three things, they react differently. The carrot, rigid, unrelenting, becomes softened. The egg, with a fragile exterior protecting the soft interior, becomes hardened as a hard boiled egg. But the coffee bean, instead of being affected by the adversity of boiling water, affects the boiling water to create coffee. And so to me, that's part of how we can choose what we can control in terms of how we react and respond to those things. And these mistakes, yeah, we need to have that inner circle. We need to have people who we can talk with about these challenges, about these issues, so that then we can overcome them, right? Another thing I say almost every single week is a quote from John Maxwell: one is too small a number to achieve great things. Everything of substantial historic significance is done by more than one person. So having that inner circle and leaning on different people for different things. Gosh, there's a friend of mine who's also a business consultant. He and I talk regularly, and we support one another as we're navigating some of the different challenges. I have another friend who supports me more, more from the standpoint of, hey, you know what? I just need a pep talk. Can you give me a pep talk, right? And going forward with that. So, we're talking about the number one business mistake we made and how you can avoid it, right? Ultimately, we need to be honest with ourselves and have that level of vulnerability
Yeah.
to talk with someone. And so let me ask you this, Roy, in terms of mistakes that you have made,
I
think
think
of
the
think
other
of oh, go ahead.
I think the other gigantic mistake that I made in business at one point in time is not realizing that everybody else is not me. Like it's not
Mm,
their business. That
yep,
they're part of a team, right? But it's
yep.
not their business. My job as the owner, as the head of the team, is to bring the culture, is to
Mm,
bring the vision, is to keep everybody motivated. But on top of that, right? The other thing is to make sure, believe it or not, they're doing the opposite in some ways of me, right?
mm,
And the opposite is they're actually turning off the business when they leave the office,
yeah.
right? So it's you want to make sure that your people are spending their nights, their weekends, like let's say if it was a regular job, right? Because people work different hours. But the second they leave the job, right? The
Mm,
second they leave the job, it's their life, right? It's not their business. It's my
mm,
business, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So it's it's their responsibility to enjoy life, right? Like if I was working for somebody, I can absolutely tell you if they said, listen, your hours in a day are 9 to 5. Listen, at 5:01, and I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, like if I care about the company, I need to stay to 5:05 or 5:30. Like we're not playing like these little games. I'm just
Yeah,
saying,
yeah,
but
yeah,
the
yeah,
the day that I leave, it's not my business.
yeah,
It's my opportunity to live my life. Like that is devoted towards my family, my friends, my peace of mind, but
yeah.
like all those types of things. Like that's not your business, right? So there was a time for quite some time that I didn't get that. Like I actually did not get that. Like I couldn't realize like why somebody like I felt like they should be me, right?
Mm,
And this was, when you're growing a business, right? And you're like, man, this person needs to have the dedication like I do. It's in you kind of snap out of it and you realize that the most important thing is taking care of them when they're there and then giving them that
mm-hmm,
opportunity to like have their life. I'll never forget that there was a time when we had early on in business, even in this business, in the 3D printing world, we were very, very slow for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. This is at the beginning. Black
mm,
Friday, Cyber Monday, we were slow. So the next year, believe it or not, I said to my wife, I said, let's take off. Like it's a holiday, let's take off. And we left and we went out of town. And
mm,
people had asked me for the time off as well. And I was like, yeah, sure, have off as well. Like I actually gave people the time off, right? Next thing you know, that year, it just started going crazy. So
mm,
what I did, no joke, it went crazy. Like the store was going nuts. I actually flew back, right? Me and my wife, and we ran the business and we didn't call our people back
mm-hmm.
because we valued them and we gave them off and that was their time.
Yeah.
But I never did it again after that, but it's my business again and it's my responsibility to take ownership of what I did wrong and do that and give my people that time off. So there's a mistake, right? Biggest mistakes that you learn in business is you make sure you always got coverage because you never know when something's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And that's the thing too. I love that you're talking about that in terms of leadership, because that's my big passion is leaders and how what they do impacts their employees, which quite frankly impacts their lives, right? And one specific part of what I do is around company culture and employee engagement. I'll tell you a quick story. This is one of my friends. I mean, not even a long story, but one of my friends, he had a similar scenario less than a month ago. He operates, he's a CEO of a very, very successful IT company that does hardline networking and this, that, and the other things, hardware, this, that, and the other. He was going to spend some time with a group of friends of us, and one of his people called out sick, and then the other person wasn't able to make it for whatever reason. And then he said, you know what, I need to be there with the rest of my crew to be able to be a part of it. I can't, in his own work ethic, he's like, I can't just be out here having fun while things are, quote, falling apart. And so I love that that's what your style is, Roy, because as leaders, our job is to ensure that our people are successful. And sometimes that is pushing up the sleeves and getting in there and doing the work as well. Sometimes it is working in the business. And yeah, as far as leadership, we always want to focus on the strategies and working more on the business than and more than that than working in the business. But sometimes we just really have to do that. And, in terms of leadership style, quite frankly, there's a term that applies, and that's servant leadership. It's that, Roy, in your example, you were serving your employees by making sure that things were going to be taken care of, and they had already scheduled the time off or given approval to have the time off so they can do the things that they want to and need to with their family and friends. And that's why we work, right? That we work to live, we don't live to work. And so I think that that's sometimes people lose sight of that. and why I said at the very top of the call, talking about the things that I do, a lot of times people don't even consider what's happening with company culture. And David, thank you for joining us today and having the balance. You have a wonderful weekend as well. Stay blessed, my friend. So, as far as these different mistakes, um, if you could go back and whisper one sentence to yourself, Roy, before your biggest mistakes, what would you say?
Hmm.
Stuff.
Would I still make the mistake or I wouldn't make the mistake?
Well, I mean, it's up to you. If you could
I
go
think
back and
I think
whisper one sentence,
if I couldn't tell myself to not make the mistake, right? I would
uh-huh.
tell myself that it's all gonna work out and it's gonna be okay.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
as we get older, right? And I truly say this, I think as we get older and we go through things, especially in the business side of the world, I have the tendency to let something affect me right away. But when it sinks in, then I realize like I've already been through something twice as bad as this. Like it's not that bad. But at the moment that it first hits me, I'm like, I kind of go, like, you just, you don't want to be around me because it hits
Yeah.
me and it's like, boom. And then I realize, like, listen, it's nowhere near as bad as, what happened here and here and
Mm-hmm.
here. So I think it's that is you realize, right? It is going to work itself out. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
not dead, you're here and you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
figure it out. You're gonna figure it out one way or other. You're a smart person, right? And sometimes that takes somebody, like you said, giving you a call and being like, listen, it's gonna work out, Roy. Like
Yeah.
you're a smart guy. Like you're gonna figure it out. And I
Yeah.
do. I end up do figure it out, like I said, but at that exact second. So it's as we get older, we're less affected in a way, which is really good because, right, there's only so much you as a person can take of stress.
Mm-hmm.
And you stress about something that is first hitting you, especially as an entrepreneur in business, you stress about it tremendously more the first time something happens, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And and for some reason, it's typically people say this a lot, and I have to say it is like when something bad happens, it typically comes in threes. Like, I don't
Mm.
know if you've ever heard that. It comes in threes, but
Mm-hmm.
like sometimes it's not threes, it's sevens and tens, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
sometimes but it's typically at least three. Like it's
Yep.
always back to back to back. It's not ever just one thing. Like one thing led to the next, to the next, to the next. And especially this year, I can tell you, with everything that's going on in the world and these tariffs and the
Mm.
president and the economy and just everything, right? It's a constant. I think I'm more focused this year and paying attention to everything than easing off the pulse and being like, okay, like we
Yeah.
can get, like, things are changing so fast. They're changing so fast that you have got to be focused in. Um, and what I mean by that is not just necessarily working in the business, but working on the business. You got to
Mm-hmm.
really focus on not what you call working on the business, but focus on everything that's going on.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, it's funny because as you're talking about that, it is everything's going to work out, right? And I think part of why I would assume that you would say something like that, Roy, is because, you look at mistakes as opportunities. And that's how we all should be, right? You look at those mistakes and challenges and errors as learning opportunities. And again, going back to what we can control, and you can control how you react and respond to that thing. And I'll tell you, if I were able to go back and whisper one sentence to myself before my mistake, and again, my mistake was that I want to be everything to everyone. My advice that I give myself is I would say practice what you preach. Practice what you preach because I tell my clients focus. I tell my clients, what is your unique selling proposition? What is the thing that really differentiates you from everyone else? And focus there. Who is your target avatar? Let's focus on that. And then here's me like casting this giant net. It's funny because sometimes when I talk about this with people, it is about how to take, and apologize if anyone's offended by this analogy, but how to take a sniper approach versus a shotgun approach. So for people who might not be familiar with firearms, shotgun, it sprays wide, right? And even like when you see in the movies when they do a sawed-off shotgun or something, there's less of a barrel and goes wider. But a sniper doesn't use a shotgun. A sniper uses a very, very accurate bullet, right? And they're honing in on a very specific target. And so, I feel like for me, it is practicing what I preach. And same thing that goes for anyone that's viewing with us today. Chances are chances are you might have uttered the words, do as I say, not as I do. Sometimes you say that with your kids, even, right? And so being able to take the advice that you give to others and applying it. And that's part of why I love these conversations, Roy, because it helps me as well as an entrepreneur just to be able to have those reminders around some of the things that will help us continue to be successful because neither you nor I have every single answer, right? And so this is also one of those mechanisms where Roy is part of my inner circle. As we're talking about some of the different things to be able to say, hey, you know what, this is what's going on. Hey, you know what, these are some ways that we can grow. Hey, you know what, yada, yada, yada. So, really helping to having people help to avoid some of those types of mistakes. So, here's a couple of rapid fire questions for you, Roy. Rapid fire questions. You learn more from failure or success?
Failure.
Failure. All right. Bigger regret, not acting or acting too fast.
Acting too fast.
Okay. More painful, lost time or lost money?
Lost money.
Okay. And then do you believe every mistake has value or are some just dumb?
It's catch 22. Say a little bit of both. A little bit of both, my friend. A little bit of both. You know what I
Right?
mean? I'd say 50-50.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. So that's the thing too. These are types of questions that we should ask ourselves as we navigate leadership, as we navigate entrepreneurship, as we navigate ownership.
Yeah.
Like, what do we act too fast or do are we not acting, on the thing? Is lost time or lost money more painful? Does every mistake have value or is it just dumb? Are we learning more from the failure or for this from the success? And again, nobody knows better than the person, as far as what's happening in their head and what's happening in their heart. And so again, it goes back to something we touched upon earlier in this conversation, and that is that self-awareness, so that then we can move forward in the right way to overcome these things. Viewers, for those of you who are still with us, I would love to have you chat in a question for either Roy or myself surrounding this topic around mistakes and how to avoid them. So, as we continue the conversation here, Roy, as far as what we've talked about in terms of our leadership style, we've talked about these mistakes
Yeah.
that have helped us and
Yeah, I
whatnot.
think I think one thing that I want to bring up is like the game has changed, right?
Mm,
So the game has changed in business and in life. I truly believe the game has changed, right? The thing that you need to do, right, to get bigger, stronger, better, get ahead, right, is find if you're looking to create a business, right? Most people have already created that business, right? There's not a lot of things. Now, if you're creating something that's brand new, it's a little bit different, but most of the time, you're creating something that has already been created. Somebody has already made and been successful, right? So the game, what I mean by the game has changed is you don't need to make as many mistakes as
mm,
you can make. You need to find somebody that has
mm.
already made those mistakes,
Love that.
and you need to 100% get that person to help you be more successful by not making those mistakes. And please
Hmm.
understand, 99.9% of the time, you're going to pay that person because they've already made those mistakes and it's cost
Yeah,
them an enormous amount of money. But they will help you not make those mistakes. You're just going to need, there's going to be a transaction there, right?
yeah.
There's going to be a cost, right? And then the second thing that you need to do, right, and I'm just being honest, is you need to make sure that that person is really who they say they are, right?
Mm,
Is 100% who they say they are, and that they have built the business that they have built, right?
mm-hmm,
And that they have the resume that they truly have. And this isn't about disrespect, this isn't that. Like, this
mm-hmm,
is, listen, like, if you're gonna give somebody a transaction, money, that's going to help you become better, right? You have the right to truly understand if that person has been successful, right? Like
mm-hmm.
where they're at and what they do. So there is times that unfortunately there's a lot of people out there that say they've ran a business, they've done this and they haven't. And you say,
Right.
Roy, well, how do I check that? It's called hire a private investigator and look the person in the eye and say, I need you to fill out a background check and I
Yeah.
want to make sure that you've done this. And if
Mm-hmm,
you have, I'll be more than happy to, right?
mm-hmm.
Like this is no joke. Like if I'm going to be a coach or a consultant for a company, one, my stuff is out there. Like I have my financials are online because I've won awards, different things like that. But I have what I say I have. Like there's no hiding
Yeah.
who I am and what I have. I If you're paying for me to make sure that you make an enormous less mistakes, right? Then that's a good, healthy thing that's going on, right?
Yeah.
Because you want those types of things. So I think it's amazing because I was just looking at the other day, this lady, she has two kids and her kids were have massive, enormous allergies, just really, really bad allergies. And she created like a program for parents that have kids with bad allergies,
Hmm.
right? And she created like ways to notify the school. She created ways to make sure that they eat the right thing. But on top of that, she created like basically like even an ongoing thing where they're constantly updating stuff because ingredients are changing, food's changing, all these things. So now she has this entire network, but she's a stay-at-home mom, but she created a thing that she had to do for her kids, and now it's a business for her, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
business that she truly enjoys because she doesn't want to see like kids go into anaphylactic shock because they're
Yeah.
eating the wrong things, they're doing these things. So, but same thing, she's providing a service that that person, if they had kids, right, and they didn't have like the plan, she created a plan that she knew worked, and she's providing that to other parents, and she's lessening their learning curve, and she's constantly helping them make sure that it doesn't happen forward. And so
Yeah.
it's those types of things, right? But the
Yeah. It's so funny you say that because I was just on a call with somebody and we're talking about how he said, I've talked to a lot of business coaches and he's like, and they're basically full of it, the ones that he had spoken with, because they don't have the experience to be able to give insights or advice, right? Like, sure, I understand that there's great value in what people learn from an academic perspective. Don't get me wrong, right? There's value in that. Also, there's a tremendous amount of value in the experience. And actually, part of my background, we talk about I was in learning development and led learning development. There's three E's of development: education, exposure, and experience. Education is like learning the stuff out of books, listening to podcasts or whatever it
yeah.
is, exposure, and that is shadowing, mentoring, that sort of thing. But then the biggest part of your development is experience. What did you learn from those two other things? And so, yeah, having somebody who really does have a background to be able to say, yep, these are some of the things that I have seen. Not necessarily the I would, but I did. And knowing what their background is. And actually, I'm going to give a quick plug here. When you're interacting with people, you want to get to know more about them, right? And so my quick plug is For those of you who are in the Tampa Bay area, there's a free live event on August 27th where we're leading the Hiring Academy, which is how to hire the right person the first time and every time. And this isn't just about hiring employees. This is hiring your vendors. This is hiring the contractors or whatever it is, because you want to make sure that you know what questions to ask to get the right person. If it is somebody who's going to be a part of your inner circle, if it's going to be an executive on your team, if it's going to be a worker or whatnot. So absolutely critical to make sure you know people. And actually, even Roy, I know you've mentioned in the past when it comes to hiring, using personality profiles, style profiles, all those different things, all these tools and resources to be able to get to know people as a part of how they can contribute in your life. Now, I do see a comment here from Matt. He asked a question in terms of avoiding mistakes. How often are you running decisions by other individuals with opinions you trust, decisions that aren't required for you to run them by others? So I'll ask you that, Roy. How often are you running decisions by other individuals?
So with businesses, I have what is called a senior leadership team, right? So it's people
Hmm.
that are upper management that I confine in. And believe it or not, there's multiple times in a day that I forward an email that says just the word thoughts or feedback, right? So I'm running
Love that.
stuff by people all the time and having
Love
them
that.
look at stuff, having them like basically analyze something because
Hmm.
I trust them and I want to get their thoughts. So at the end of the day, it's my decision, right? It's
Yeah.
yes or no. I'm the guy, I'm the end guy, I'm the
Yeah.
CEO, I'm the owner, right? But absolutely, I mean, if you have somebody that you trust that is smart and intelligent, and you can confide in that person, absolutely, why not? Because there may be
Hmm.
just something that pops out that helps you, right? Or helps you make less like listen, no matter what, you have to remember owning a business and owning businesses, you're constantly making mistakes. Like
Yeah.
you don't ever just have it figured out. I mean, I've been
Yeah.
doing this for decades. Like you still make mistakes, right? So the key is surrounding yourself with a good team, right? With people that you can trust that are there. But you're in a day like we are in 2025 where things are shifting. There's mistakes that are being made and there's things that are changing very quickly, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And things that are happening.
Yeah.
So, yes, if you value people's what they have, what their intellect is, what their approach is, what their capability of handling a stressful situation is, absolutely. The
Yeah.
more information that you get back, the better.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's a saying, and I've forgotten who says this, but not one of us is smarter than the sum of us, right? And so that's why it is critical to be able to have that. And I'm right there with you, Roy. Like literally that email that says thoughts question mark. That's it. And not trying to lead them down a certain path because you respect what their perspective and insight may be around it. And again, it's the people who you have that trust in. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't say like, oh, just throw everything by everyone all the time. Like, no, like where you're going to get actual value from getting feedback. So, Matthew,
Yeah.
thank you for that awesome, awesome question. I know we are running on the time here, and we had some technical challenges up in the beginning of the session. But thank you all for tuning in with us this week. We do this every single week, and we've been changing days and times as we're trying to navigate what will be the most effective for our viewers. So if there is a specific day or time that you think is really beneficial in your world, certainly drop that in the chat as Roy and I continue to explore what will be the best suited fit for everyone. I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in, and Roy, I'll turn it to you to close us out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm definitely interested in when people are wanting us to do this. I can tell you next week will be Friday because I am out of town Monday through Thursday. So I am going to a convention in Dallas. So I unfortunately won't be able to do it except for Friday next week. But I appreciate every single person listening in. If you're hearing our recording, like I said, secrets for success we do every single week. The goal is same thing. so that you make less mistakes in business and in life. And if there's information that we can provide you to make you stronger and more successful, that is 100% what we want to do. So I appreciate you tuning in this week and look forward to hopefully you coming back next week and hearing what we have to say. Thank you and have a great week.